What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball. And more importantly, welcome back to our season preview series, the series where I'm breaking down all 30 NBA teams before the start of the regular season. We're going in depth with these videos. We're going to talk about rotation, salary cap situation, draft assets, what their offseason looked like, trade ideas, everything that you need to be ready for the start of the regular season. In this video, we have the very interesting Indiana Pacers. So hey, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so. All right, let's get into it. Alrighty, y'all, as you can see, we have a lot to get to in this video. We're talking about the Indiana Pacers today. For those of you that don't know, though, this is my season preview spreadsheet. I'd like to build out these little spreadsheets to kind of help articulate and tell the story behind my videos and everything. I think it's a useful tool. The good news is you guys can have access to the tool. A pretty easy way to get it. All you have to do is leave me a comment saying like, hey, I'd like access to the spreadsheet. From there, I'll give you a link to join my Discord. Hop on the Discord regardless. I think it's a fun place. We're all talking about a bunch of different things on there. But anyway, once you're on the Discord, just shoot me a DM. It's easy to find me. Just saying like, hey, I was on YouTube. Like I was hoping to get the spreadsheet. I'll give it to you right there. I've got a message all ready to paste and give to you. And yeah, pretty simple process. But anyway, we've got the Indiana Pacers in this video. So the Pacers were a really fun story this last year. The Indiana Pacers, let me start off by saying this. They're one of the few franchises in the NBA, and we should have just, I'm trying to think of the order of which I'm recording these. We should have just done the Utah Jazz, right? So the Utah Jazz, Indiana Pacers, and Miami Heat are the three teams in the NBA that actively will say we don't believe in tanking. We try to win every single basketball game we're in at all times. Just culture very, very high with the Indiana Pacers, and they were rewarded this year. They bought in the middle of the season with the Pascal Siakam trade. They went and made a move to go get a guy that they needed around like a bunch of young players that are starting to kind of put it together, and they ended up going to the conference finals. They had one of the best offenses the NBA's ever seen. The defense was a little bit lackluster, but you know, give and take to things. It's a young team overall, and a lot of times defense comes a little bit later, and that's okay. But this team now has a full offseason with a roster that's pretty much stayed completely intact. They're going to come back this year, hopefully be healthier, and they're going to try to make another run at it. Last year they were 47-35. Obviously bringing in Pascal Siakam helped them really go on their run. He fit in perfectly to their running gun offense that they were going through last year. Him and Tyrese Halliburton were a really nice combination to pair with some other guys like Miles Turner and the growth of Andrew Nembhard and everything. But this franchise is obviously contending. They're trying to win games. In all fairness, I'm not sure the Pacers would ever like take this status off. Maybe they could fit into like the growing stage or something like that, like a year or two ago, but this team is always contending. Somebody asked me in the comments in a video that I posted that went up today. They were like, hey, so like what kind of makes like some of these good cultures? Like what are some of the examples about that? I think the Pacers are just one of those teams that have done a really good job of setting standards, right? They're like, hey, this is what we expect of you. If you're not going to meet that, this is what happens, and that happens every single time. The expectations are very clear. People understand them, and the Pacers just, they kind of do things a little bit old-fashioned. They're like, a little-known fact, they actually make their players like punch in and out, like at certain times to say that like they're lifting and they're going to practice and things like that. Like they're very on point with things like that. So I have a lot of respect for teams like that. I just think that you don't have to be quite that militarized all the time, but just having consistent standards and holding every single person to them, that's how you remain playoff relevant. Like the Pacers have been in the playoffs for as long as I can remember in like my whole life. They like with multiple different iterations of teams. Like it's just a franchise that's run well. And even though they're maybe not like winning championships all the time, like eventually, you know, just winning basketball games is going to garner the respect. And you know what? They've got a fun team. They play with a lot of energy. They still got a lot to learn. They're young, but it's a cool team. So let's talk about the goals. I always like to talk about the goals early on in the video. I think it's good to establish them so that when I'm talking about the rest of the things in my video, as you guys are sipping your morning coffee or whatever you're doing while I'm watching this video, again, leave me a comment saying what you're doing while you're watching this. I always find that interesting, but as we're going through the rest of the video, it's good to keep these goals in mind. First one, add some length at the wing spot. We're going to see this team is doing pretty well in the forwards department and pretty well in the guards department. It's not like they have bad wings. It's just, like I said, they're a little bit short right now. You need those switchable wings that can guard a couple different positions, that can really contest things with length and keep people out of passing lanes and things like that. And I just feel like that's kind of an obvious thing when you look at their depth chart. It's like, okay, yeah, they could use a guy like that, right? So try to find a guy there. figure out the power forward spot. What do I mean by that? Because they have Pascal Siakam, one of the best players we have in the game, right, at that position. Well, they also have a couple other guys at that position that a lot of people would like to see on the court. They've got like Obi Toppin there. You've got Jarris Walker, who's a young guy who a lot of Pacers fans are hoping that he can get on the court because they just spent a lottery pick on him. Hell, throw Isaiah Jackson in there. Sometimes I'd probably categorize him as a center. It doesn't matter that much at the end of the day. But you've got all this stuff here, and so maybe you can use one of these power forwards and like move on from them or something like that and go get you a wing or something like that. I'm never going to fault a team for having a lot of depth at a certain position, but when you have other holes, I don't know, I think you could maximize your assets and spread them out a little bit more. And then finally, grow the multiple talented young players that you have on this team, right? So a lot of interesting young players on this team, a lot of them that have started to show a lot of promise already early. No, I'm not even just saying like all-star potential, but like they look good. They've had great starts to their NBA career and they're very young. So let's continue to grow these guys. Internal growth is key for Indiana and just any team nowadays. That's the best way to grow your franchise. I mean, you see the teams like the Spurs doing that well all the time, right? And so the Pacers, they've got a lot of guys and I fully anticipate that they're gonna. This is why like we see the like second round talent like work out for them and stuff like that. Growing them the right way, keep doing it. We'll talk about some of the players in this video in particular, but let's go talk about their offseason. It was actually a relatively quiet one. So yeah, no, this is their offseason right here in a picture. It's pretty easy to digest overall. For those of you that aren't familiar with my video, I always break this down into 3 different parts. The drafted players section, I think you can figure out what that means. Player departures, so players that were like on the full-time roster last year that are no longer on that roster are listed here. And then players brought in, so players that were in the NBA but were now brought in through some means are now on the team, right? So let's start off with drafted players. The Pacers didn't have any first-round picks this year, but they had 3 second-round picks. And as of this moment, only one of them is like on the roster, and that probably makes some sense. This wasn't a very loaded draft class, right? And this is why I like the Pacers, though. Like, they didn't go and make some stupid move. Like they could have probably tried to move up. They've got players to trade that would have been valuable to other people that could have gotten them into the first round, but they're like, look, we're not getting the guy in this one. We don't see it. So we'll just use our second round picks. It'll be a cheap way to fill out the back end of the roster. We're pretty good at developing talent. So let's take some guys like this. But it's not a big deal that they don't have Tristan Newton or Enrique Freeman, who I'm not going to cover too much in here because they're kind of back end of the draft guys. Maybe they develop into some sort of piece at some point. They seem like smart basketball players, but as of right now, we don't necessarily see a super high ceiling out of them. So it's not the worst thing if you just have them waiting in the wings somewhere else, maybe 2-way contracts or something like that. That's a good way to use them. But let's talk about Johnny Furphy, because I actually evaluated Johnny Furphy when I filled out like my actual draft report for an NBA team this year. I had Johnny Furphy. I can't remember where he was at exactly in my big board, but I want to say he was in the top 15. Like that's where I ranked him. I actually like Furphy's game quite a bit. Offensively, he's got some interesting talent. Like he's pretty sneaky athletic. He should be able to shoot from the outside right away. He was probably the best outside shooter that we had in the draft this year. Like I think Reed Shepherd probably had better numbers, but I'd say Furphy was just like more consistently just like performing from the outside. Like that's what he does. But it's honestly like his energy that he plays with that I think is so contagious. Like he was just all over the place, yelling, screaming, diving for loose balls, and something about a freshman in like a big powerhouse school that's doing stuff like that. Like I just feel like that's going to translate well. Him then going to Indiana, doesn't he look like he should play for the Pacers? He also looks like he should play hockey in Minnesota, but I don't know. He just screams a guy that's going to really perform. He's going to really put a lot of effort on the court. And there's a lot of guys on this Pacers team that give a lot of effort. So I just feel like he's in the right environment to really thrive and grow. I'm not saying it's even going to be this year necessarily. I'd be surprised if he cracked the rotation this year, but he's got some length. He can play the wing. He can be a spacer. And when you have Tyrese Halliburton on your team, that's always going to be valuable. So I think Furphy's going to do pretty good here. I'm glad that he ended up in Indiana. Talking about player departures, another power forward / center that was kind of interesting. Jalen Smith, who he's had such a weird NBA career, hasn't he? He was what, like the 10th pick by the Suns like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And then the Suns just kind of like just literally gave up on him and we're like, yeah, we don't really want him on the team anymore. And I feel like a lot of us were kind of like, why? Like, yeah, he doesn't really get on the court much, but he seems fine when he's out there. Like, I didn't personally understand it. I was like, I think his defense is pretty solid. He can shoot from the outside a little bit. He's got some good length. He moves pretty well. Like, he's not dominating anybody, but I'm like, he seems like a pretty good player, and I would say he maintained that in Indiana. Like, he kind of got benched going into the playoffs this last year, which I thought was kind of a coaching mistake by Indiana. I don't know. I felt like he should have been on the court a little bit more, like when they were looking for other center minutes or something like that, because he can step out and like hit some shots. I mean, if we go over to Indiana's roster last year and you look at Jalen Smith, I mean, 42%. He was only taking 2.5 a game, but still, that's your center, like that's a valuable thing. About 10 points a game, 5 rebounds. Like, he's getting you half a block in that amount of time. He's only playing 17 minutes. Like, that's a pretty crazy stat line for only 17 minutes, right? So he's on the Chicago Bulls now. I thought it was a really underrated pickup by the Bulls, actually. What are they going to do with him? That's we'll see, but kind of a loss for them. But they've got a bunch of other people at the position, so not really tripping about it. And then we got Dougie McBuckets over here. Doug McDermott, just reliable outside shooter who secretly can put the ball on the floor pretty well. Like, he's gotten really good in his career when people like attack him because he's a shooter, right? He's a guy that's going to run around floppy screens or pin downs, things like that, go catch the ball, shoot. He's gotten really good at getting like 1 or 2 dribbles, getting to the hoop and finishing over people. Hasn't been picked up by anybody. I'd find it hard to believe somebody doesn't pick him up in some quality or in some quantity. Like, somebody could use Doug McDermott, right? He's got good size. He can somewhat stay in front of people. If nothing else, he's got a strong chest to help keep himself in front of people. That's a little hack for you people that maybe don't play basketball as much. You can use your chest to kind of help keep people in front of them when you're like me and you don't have a lot of lateral quickness, but you had to guard point guards. If you have strong legs and a strong chest, you can kind of make up for it. So that's just a little thing there. But Doug McDermott's gone, so not enormous losses at the end of the day. Again, you hope Furphy's a project for you to kind of replace him. And again, Jalen Smith, it stinks to lose a guy like that, but you do have other people. But then they went and signed James Wiseman. One of the more interesting stories, is it even a story? Like, second overall pick by the Warriors. The Warriors have proven that they're not that great at developing talent, unfortunately, for whatever reason. It's very confusing considering everything else about the franchise. But they end up moving him for just like Gary Payton or whatever they got in that trade. He goes to Detroit. James Wiseman still just doesn't look like he's played enough basketball. But here's my thing. So I think a lot of us are ready to write off James Wiseman. I have a theory that he's actually going to perform pretty well here in Indiana because, look, the best basketball this guy's ever played is in very up and down systems because we all know the dude is like freakishly athletic for his size. He can move, he can get up and down the court. He just doesn't like play basketball very smart, right? And like maybe there's a toughness issue or something like that, or a question more so, but like, we know he can get up and down the court, and that's all Indiana does. It's just like get up and down the court, like run pick and rolls, like move. In theory, he should be very comfortable with this. Like, it's just a more organized AAU style. And so, I don't know. I feel like if it's going to work anywhere, this is actually where it could work. And so, having another center like this that's a little more run, jump, and dunky to play with Halliburton, and he's a bit of a different look than Turner, I think it could actually be kind of interesting. So, don't be surprised if James Wiseman like makes like an impact this year or something as like a backup center or something like that. Just remember your old friend AVC brought that up. But anyway, let's go talk about the rest of the roster and everything. Alrighty, y'all. Those of you that have been watching these videos know that this is my favorite tab on the whole spreadsheet. This is basically my ideal off-season spreadsheet. It's nice because we can look at a couple different things here. We can take a look at everybody's salary, how many years they got left, what's the team kind of working with right now. We can see their just like salary cap position right now. We can see their draft assets and everything, so we get an idea of what kind of moves they can make. And then we just have a depth chart in general to kind of help us visualize how the team's looking. But where I want to start off always is with draft assets and things like that. So let me zoom out just a little bit more. There we go. I just think it's good to kind of establish like, okay, what kind of assets are we working with as a team? And I'll always note some picks not listed either have protections or things like that. I'm listing things that like are available there to like trade and use, things like that, right? So they have their own first round pick going into next year. That's really valuable for teams like this one. Next year's draft class is just like important. They also have a bunch of second round picks again, who we'll see if they actually get to use them. Probably not on this Hornets pick or this Heat pick necessarily, but they might get their own second round pick, or they'll get their own second round pick at the very least. And like I said, these picks are important for contending teams because as your team gets more and more expensive, as you're paying for your other younger guys, you want these like end of the first round draft picks or like end of the or like middle second, early second round type picks, because you don't have to pay them like a couple $1,000,000 and they take up a roster spot. You can grow them. It's just an easy way to fill out the roster. So Good for them for keeping that. Don't see a 2026 pick listed, but then they have a 2027, 28, 29, 30, and 31. So this team has done a good job of building while not just like completely forfeiting all their assets. They gave away a lot for Pascal Siakam, but I'd say it was well worth it. They got to the conference finals, and he performed very well. He looks like he fit the system really well. So after a full offseason, you just expect that things will continue to get better. But this team's got good assets to work with in that case, and they have tradable contracts, which we'll go over in a second. But this team's in a pretty good spot draft-wise, so credit to the GM there, managing his assets well. He's building well, drafting well, so good for them. I wish the Bulls could do that. All right, let's talk about their salary cap situation. For those of you that don't know, there's kind of four main levels that you got to be aware of when it comes to like the NBA salary cap. If you want a deeper explanation as to the full consequences of reaching these different levels, go watch like my first video or two in the series. It's the Celtics and Grizzlies ones. But here's a very quick breakdown, and I'm very curious if those of you that have been watching all these videos, y'all skip through this part, or do y'all just like listen to me say it each and every time? But anyway, so we got cap space in general. That's just typical sports cap line and everything. We've crossed that threshold here. Luxury tax. That's when you start paying a little bit more for your team to exist, right? Penalizing you for having an expensive team. We're only about $1 million away from that, and currently there's no roster spots open. So if we do want to improve the team, we're probably going to cross into luxury tax. But considering this team made it to the conference finals and they're not there, pretty good, right? And then we have the first two aprons. So these are newer in basketball. These are the NBA's attempt at keeping players where they're at. The NBA was getting sick of star players getting traded all the time. It's not good for like viewer retention and fan like loyalty, things like that, numbers that are important to their bottom line and everything. And I think the NBA just kind of viewed it as like a lack of quality, that we were kind of treating it like AAU. People are just swapping teams all the time. So these aprons have been put in place to basically start restricting what you can do as a team as your team gets more expensive. So the better teams, when they're like, all right, we're hitting contention point, our team's going to get expensive. All right, the NBA is going to start locking your team down. The only way you can go now is down. Like, it's just, we're going to make it really, really hard for you to make any sort of move. We're just going to lock your team down. And you know what? I think it's actually a good thing. I think it's good for basketball. It reminds me of like when I was younger watching the league and guys kind of stuck around a little bit more. You can get a little more attached to the team. So I think it's good. They're pretty far away from those aprons, and they haven't hit them, so they've got a lot of flexibility to go out there and make some moves and things like that. So if they do end up crossing into the apron and maybe they find another like really good player they want to add to the team, they should feel pretty comfortable doing that. So that's good for Indiana, man. Glad they're using their assets well. Let's talk about the rest of the roster. Tyrese Halliburton, that whole thing of him being traded for Sabonis, that was one of the craziest trades I'd ever seen. I was like, oh, the Kings are so dumb. Why are the Kings such a bad franchise? Things have actually been going pretty good there now. Apparently people are starting to like the new ownership group. Coach has got a culture that's like winning. I don't know if you guys would just watch like DeMar DeRozan's interview on Paul George's podcast, but he was just like, no, yeah, I went there, like this coach like knows what the hell's going on. He knows how to win basketball games. People talk about just like winning there. This is the standard. Like, y'all think I'm bullshitting you with like this culture stuff. I'm telling you, it's so important. It's so important. So good for them. That ended up being a great trade for both sides. You've got a gold medal winning point guard now. I know the whole meme with Halliburton just didn't play at all. Tyrese Halliburton's an awesome player. He's an all-star level player. One of the best like offensive players we have in the game, just from how he sees the court more than anything. He can facilitate so well. There's definitely moments where we think he struggles to kind of take over a game offensively in terms of scoring, but you know, is what it is. If you supplement him with enough quality players like they've done, I don't think it's as big of a deal at all. So that we love the Halliburton one, and he's on his new max contract and everything. Then we have Pascal Siakam, who just got a new contract as well. Like we've said, he fits in perfectly with their run and gun system. Pascal, Spicy P, Mr. Spin Move. He's just been great in systems like this. And obviously he was a guy that when you gave him the ball at the free throw line, it's just a bucket every time there's an ambulance going by. I'm going to wait for it to go by. Anyway, all right, so yeah, Pascal Siakam, very valuable to this team. I think we all know that. Miles Turner, only 1 year left on the contract. They're going to need to do something about that because Miles Turner is an important part of this team. His ability to space the floor, while the numbers like dipped like a little bit in recent years, where'd Miles Turner go? And his three-point percentage, yeah, 35%, 36%. It dropped down to like 33 the year before, but, you know, still getting up 4.2 attempts. Like, that's pretty quality out of your center. Obviously, he's a big defensive presence for them. He fits their system really well. He plays with good energy. He's got a good head on his shoulders, great at building Legos. So we like Miles Turner for this team a lot. They're going to have to find a way to keep him around. He feels like a pacer for life type of guy. Obi Toppin, another case of just culture unlocking people, right? They went and traded for Obi Toppin, ended up using like the last year of his rookie deal and being like, oh yeah, no. So now we are able to unlock the potential of this super athletic guy that now is able to shoot 3-pointers, right? And he was deadly for them in the playoffs. Him and TJ McConnell, and we'll talk about TJ McConnell, but were just deadly for them off the bench last season. So his ability to get up and down the court, dunk on people, play without the basketball, space the floor, hit from the corners, it was a big thing for them. Let's actually take a look at his shooting chart. Hey, look at this. Now, this is an analytically sound shooting chart right here. This is what we want. We don't want a bunch of scattered things. We want consistency. This franchise knows how to play like smart basketball. You have your role, you do it, right? Obviously, he's a lead around the rim, right? He's big, he's strong, he's athletic, he's going to finish over people very consistently. He's great at cutting. He's got a bunch of people that are really good at finding him for cuts, whether that's Siakam or obviously Halliburton or TJ McConnell, guys like that. Awesome. And then, yeah, he started to find his three-point stroke a little bit. If we look at his actual percentage this year, we found him at 40% on 3 attempts a game. Maybe we can get that quantity up a little bit more. It's hard. There's a lot of people playing in front of him, but he's obviously got a spot on the court that he likes to hit. We'd like to see the corners maybe get a little bit more red than where they're at right now, but overall, he shot 40% from 3 this year. He knows his spots and everything. He's contributing to the team. Obi Toppin, awesome. Aaron Nesmith, a guy that was given up on by the Boston Celtics, just couldn't really get anything going, and then he comes to the Indiana Pacers, and he's been really, really nice to them. Started a lot because Benedict Mathurin got hurt last year for them, and man, his defense was very felt, at least like a lot of his on-ball defense was able to start spacing the floor a little bit for them, played with a ton of energy. He really found a home here in Indiana. So shout out Aaron Nesmith. Again, kind of an undersized wing or whatever, and that's kind of a theme on this team like we talked about, but we like Aaron Nesmith nonetheless. TJ McConnell. Oh, TJ McConnell was always the greatest example of like, this is such an impact player, but like there's no stat that tells me that he is. And then the playoffs happened last year and I couldn't use that example anymore because the stats were crazy. Like TJ McConnell was just giving people buckets last year, and it was just hustle and rebounds and everything. And if I was a coach, I would want 3 TJ McConnells on my team. I just would. They're the guys that keep the team going. They play with a ton of energy. They're playing like they need a contract tomorrow to feed their family every single night. So I think we all know how great TJ McConnell is. I don't need to explain that to you guys. He's awesome. Benedict Mathurin, a guy that coming in as a rookie, wasn't too familiar with him, and I wasn't like sure what to think of him, but man, this dude has some killer confidence, and as a coach, I love that. Like, I want killers like that on my team. This guy has a long way to go with his game still, but we've already seen so much like offensive talent. He's strong, he's athletic, he's really good at getting himself to the rim. We could see a better shot chart, and we'll take a look at it, but so much of this guy so early on has been so encouraging, and just like the energy and attitude that he plays with, like he could really mold himself into a really good player. If we just like take a look at his stats in general, I mean, 14 points a game. They dropped this last year, obviously, just because like other guys on the team were starting to get better and they were scoring too, but he got himself from like 32% his rookie year up to 37% from 3. Again, a little bit low attempts maybe, but honestly, we're pretty happy with that. I'll pull up his like actual shooting chart now though, so you can look at it. All right, so here is Ben Mathurin. So he gets to the rim. It's a bit of a struggle when you get to the rim, though. Some of his finishing and some of his touches are a little bit rough, but he gets by people, and that just shows like by this, right? Because like he's not usually moving as much without the basketball. He's trying to create for himself a little bit more. He's fearless, and we love that. For whatever reason, like really lethal from the mid-range, but we're probably trying to tighten this up a little bit. Like this is young guy settling for shots a little bit right here, but he's hitting them, so that's cool. Obviously, he's got his spot on the court that's hot as well. If we could space that out even more, that's great. But yeah, gets to the rim well. He loves getting there. It just hasn't really converted yet, but that's okay. Like he's young, he's figuring it out. Sometimes he's a bit of a bull in a china shop type thing where he's like, all right, I'm just getting there somehow and I'll figure it out when I get there. And he hasn't quite figured out what to do when he gets there. But you know, we like his game anyway. He's got a team option this year. They'll definitely pick it up. Jarris Walker. Now, he lottery pick last year, right? Didn't get to play. Him and Taylor Hendricks were like the 2 power forwards that were like lottery picks last year that just didn't get to play much at all. And we just don't know much with Jarris Walker at this point. I know a lot of people are hoping to see him get some minutes out there. We're hoping that he can be kind of a stretch wing that can play some defense or whatever, but there's just not enough minutes or film to really tell you much about him. He's on the team. He could be a valuable trade asset or whatever, but I know there's a lot of Pacers fans that want to see him grow and see him get on the court and everything. So I guess we'll see. Isaiah Jackson's on the last year of his contract. He's kind of just a run, jump, and dunk kind of undersized center that, look, he's going to play really hard, and that's a theme for a lot of these guys on the team, and so we love that. He's a wonderful backup or / reserve center to have on your team. Just going to bring a lot of energy. James Johnson is the bruiser of the team, the vet on the team. What do we keep talking about in these videos? The smart teams, the ones that are always in the playoffs, have a James Johnson type guy on them. You need that vet on the team that's going to either beat the shit out of somebody if they step out of line, or they'll be the first one to get in a fight, like in the actual games themselves. You need guys like that. I'm not saying that's like their actual job, but it's their job to be like the leader, the on-court coach, the OG that everybody respects, right? Like, that's why James Johnson got another contract this year with this team to come back, because everybody respects him. Like, he's been through it. Like, is he going to be on the court and be effective? Hell no, he's not. Like, he's just not at this point, but he's on the team to be a leader. So that's what he's doing. Ben Shepherd. This was a fun one to learn about last year. I was just not familiar with Ben Shepherd's game, and then come playoff time, like the Pacers decided we're going to play Ben Shepherd instead of Doug McDermott, and I criticized them for that at first early on, and I'll always raise my hand when I was like, what are we doing here? But hey, these coaches are with him all day, and I'm not, and it'd be wrong of me to make an assessment like that, and when you're just not when you're not in the locker room all the time, you just don't know what you don't know. And Ben Shepherd, man, again, this is a young dude that offensively, not doing much right now. Like, he's only taking wide open shots, and he's only doing the smartest things possible. And I give him a lot of credit for that, being a rookie and being out there. His energy is awesome. His defense is cool. Like, he's getting in front of people. He's pestering them. He's doing the right thing. But more importantly, as a rookie, he just didn't make mistakes. Like, he was just always out there doing the right thing, making the next pass. Like, there were never moments where he was catching the ball and he's like, oh, geez, what do I do now? He's like, nope, getting it back to Siakam, and I'm going to space, and I'm going to cut through here. And then, I'll be ready for the next pass, and then I'll get it to the next guy so that they can go get their shot or whatever. He's actively trying to make everyone better. So I love Ben Shepherd. Can't wait to see him continue to develop. James Wiseman, we talked about him a little bit. Only $500K is guaranteed this year. So things start going awry. Maybe you want another roster spot. That's an easy thing to look at here. Kendall Brown, there is our lengthier, younger wing that there's just not many minutes of him. Like, we just don't really know what to think with him yet. I believe his 3-point shot actually wasn't bad last year or something, right? Or no, he just didn't take any threes? Okay, I guess that's more so what it is. I don't know. The dude didn't play very much last year, so I just don't have much to say about him, but he's on the team. The contract is not guaranteed this year, so that's another way to get another roster spot open. But lengthy wing, you don't really have many of those on the team. Maybe he develops into something in Indiana. Andrew Nembhard, a Canadian surprise for this team. Honestly, if you just look at his overall numbers last year, where is Andrew Nembhard? Yeah, you'd see 9.2 points per game. Okay, fair enough. 36% from three, not many attempts. Okay. The assists 4 a game, turnovers maybe a little bit high. You're like, okay, what's kind of going on here? But this guy, he really started to put it together at the end of last season, and very young player, right? Very, very young player, but ended up starting to put up some big scoring numbers, hit some big shots. I'll also say, I've never seen so many people or someone make so many dumb decisions at the end of basketball games too. This guy single-handedly took some of the worst shots and had some of the worst turnovers, and they were the types of mistakes where the vets are literally just the vets on the other team, I should say, are baiting him into these things. I can see it on my TV because I've had vets do that to me before, and I'm like, oh no, he's gonna fall for it, and he falls for it every single time. So he's got a little bit of growing to do. Is he more of a natural point guard? Probably, but we're gonna play him next to Halliburton and kind of see what happens. But if he can become a nice scoring guard for them, I think it's great. And then we talked about Furphy a little bit. Should be a good long-term floor spacer and things like that. Plays a lot of energy. Should fit the team mold. That's the roster you got this year, y'all. Good news is that you've got a lot of your team locked up for a little while. That's good. These guys that are coming off contract, except for Miles Turner, which he's been very good at negotiating with them in the past and everything. You hope that just gets figured out, but you're not really losing anybody of extreme importance or anything. This team's locked up for a while and it's not that expensive. That's awesome, right? Eventually you're going to have to pay guys like this, so it's good to keep it like this for now. But anyway, let's talk about the depth chart. At the point guard position, when you got all-star Tyrese Halliburton and one of the bench gods in TJ McConnell, you feel pretty good. Andrew Nembhard can also play that position. Looking at other guards on the team, like Ben Shepherd, like we said, we like him as a young player. Mathurin could play the 2 if you wanted him to. Neesmith could play there if you wanted him to. Maybe even Furphy if you wanted him to. So you got some options there. When you get to the forwards, you notice it starts to get a little bit small between Mathurin and, like I said, Neesmith. And we just don't know what we have with Kendall Brown and Furphy. So that's maybe a little bit of a hole, but we like these two as players, and they fit well in the system. So That's good, right? The power forward, we got a lot of stuff going on here between Siakam, Obi Toppin, and Jarris Walker. We've already talked about that, though. Maybe Jarris Walker is a trade piece for someone. We might even explore that in this video. We might explore some other deals as well. But then in the center spot, you got Miles Turner. You feel great about him. Isaiah Jackson, we said, is very quality. Not going to make a ton of mistakes while he's out there. And then James Wiseman, who I am hopeful about. So you've got a good team rolling into this year. You've got assets to make things happen. You're in a good salary cap space. You got picks to use, which is cool. And you know what? You've got your team locked up for a little while. And you know that this team had some success last year. So what kind of deals can we do with that? That's what we're going to explore now. Let's go do some trades. Alrighty, so we're back here on Fanspo trying to make some trades. And I'm honestly not completely sure like how this is gonna work, but oops, I didn't want to pull the Celtics into this necessarily. What I'm kind of thinking I want to do is I want to use the Pacers as kind of a 3-teamer, because whenever I see we have space like this, teams are going to be trying to take advantage of that nowadays, because you need places to dump salary in order to make deals and stuff. So the Kings we know are going to be buyers in some capacity, right? I'd like to add a third team to this, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how I can make this happen, but I feel like the Portland Trailblazers could also be of use, because here's my thing. Jeremy Grant doesn't need to be on the Trailblazers. Where I think he would make some sense is on the Sacramento Kings. I know a lot of Kings fans trying to get him more of a power forward on the team. I like Keegan Murray a lot. I personally think there's a lot of star potential there, but I know there's been a lot of talk of trying to bring in another power forward onto this team. I think it kind of starts from there. You look at a guy like Kevin Huerter, he makes a lot more sense on a team like Portland, because they're looking for more spacers to put around like Scoot Henderson, things like that. They don't need like some of these other guys that are clogging up positions, things like that. So where do the Pacers come into this? Well, I think Jarris Walker's part of the move in some capacity, because we have to supplement Portland for losing a good player in Jeremy Grant. So Jarris Walker is also on his way here. Who are we taking back as Indiana? My idea is that's a good opportunity to try to get like a Matisse Thybulle over to the Pacers. We've been trying to get a little bit better defensively. He's not that tall, but he's got a lengthier wingspan and can guard wings. I mean, this guy's one of the best on-ball defenders there is in basketball. And look, Portland just doesn't need him, and he's shown that he can spot up from the outside still. So I think that could be a good place to end up with. Let me just like try this, like kind of where are we at right now? Yep, I kind of figured that. So they have to move a little bit more salary. That's exactly what I expected. So I think the next thing that happens then is Trey Lyles would go over to Portland. I think that that's something that needs to happen. And then what else can we do? Because that's not going to work in itself. Oh, this does work in itself. Okay, interesting. So let's adjust the trade, because there has to be a little bit more going on here. I think maybe there's like a pick involved in this somehow, because they're losing Jeremy Grant. Yeah, a pick probably has to go over here to Indiana in some capacity, like maybe like a second round pick or something here, maybe a first round pick, because Jarris Walker was so recently a first round pick. So maybe we say it's like a 2030 like top 5 protected that's going over to Indiana or something like that. And they got a young player out of this and some like good roster players and stuff. That's probably good enough for Jeremy Grant, because you get off the contract if nothing else. So maybe a trade like this is a good one. I could kind of see that. What happened salary wise here? They did take on a little bit more salary, and you know, is that worth it? But you've been looking for like a wing defender and stuff like that. You got to get by the Celtics somehow. That could be a decent move to try to do it. I don't know, but yeah, let's try to execute one more. All right, I feel like if we're looking for wings in some capacity, like we have to do a Brooklyn Nets Dorian Finney-Smith trade, right? That just feels like an appropriate thing. I could also try to do Cam Johnson, but let's just see how easy would it be to do a Dorian Finney-Smith deal in this case. So who do you want in this one? Like, we could throw, where did he go? Where did Jarris go? Like, this could be one where you throw Jarris over there. It could really be that simple, and then you try that trade out, and that probably works. That doesn't work, so they need to cut another like $8-ish million. Okay, fair enough. So is this one where you then throw in like a Nesmith or something like that? Pacers fans gasp. Trade him over there. He's another interesting young player. They got to give us like a pick or something too then for us to do this, which now you're getting you're losing picks, which you might not want to do if you're Brooklyn or something like that, but you might just rather have like the interesting young player or something like that. Maybe you just want this you're willing to give up this Knicks pick because you know it's not going to be that valuable anyway, and that trade works. I don't know. It's just an idea. So now that we've done that, let's go take a look at rotations. All right, so here we are with rotations. I always put a question mark on this because I don't know what minutes people are actually going to play, but it's a good exercise. You want to kind of figure out where, like, what range do you kind of want people playing and things like that. So I think it's good for that reason. Tyrese Halliburton got to play a lot of minutes. Young, really good player, right? Makes a lot of sense. Andrew Nembhard, I want him getting a good amount of minutes as well. We got to figure out how good this guy is. We talked about it at the beginning, like grow the multiple talented young players we have. All right, you're getting the chance to do it. Same with Ben Mathurin. Want him over 30 minutes a game. Like, can we get this guy to 20 points a game? Let's find out. You're asking a lot of him to do that, but let's see if he's got that in him. Pascal Siakam, obviously the second best player on this team, if not the best player on this team, so he's getting 32, probably 33 minutes a game, something like that each night. Miles Turner, we've got a lot of quality other bigs on this team, so we don't have to stress him out too much, but his impact is well felt on this team, so he's getting 30. After that, we have the awesome bench duo of Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell. They're obviously the first two we go to. Aaron Nesmith, big part of the team last year. He's getting his like 18-ish minutes a game. And then we've got kind of like an interesting 9-10 man rotation that we're not using too much between Ben Shepherd and Isaiah Jackson. Isaiah Jackson comes in at like the end of halves or quarters or something like that just to give guys a little bit of extra rest in between the media breaks and stuff like that. That's what I'm seeing. Jarris Walker waiting in the wings with James Wiseman. You got Kendall Brown, Furphy, and James Johnson on the reserves as well. But this is a good rotation, y'all. This is a really good rotation. A lot of players that fit really, really well together. They've got a distinguished culture. This team can do a lot of damage. But let's go take a look at their lineup data from last year and see what was working. Alrighty, so here's Indiana's lineup data. A lot of positives and a lot of good sample size ones for us to look at. Interestingly enough, we've got some good sample sizes of ones that weren't very good. So this one of Tyrese Halliburton with Bruce Brown, who they traded last year, with Mathurin, Obi Toppin, and Miles Turner, was not a very successful lineup for them. And then you got this one right here, which was Halliburton, Nembhard, Mathurin, Siakam, and Turner, which is actually our suggested starting lineup. Interestingly enough, was not a positive team last year. Wonder why that is. Was this team just like not playing good enough defense or something like that? Hard to say. It's hard to say, right? But what lineups were working? This lineup worked a ton, which was Halliburton, Nembhard with Nesmith starting over Mathurin. Interestingly enough, what was Nesmith's three-point percentage last year? It was 42%. So is that difference in shooting a big reason why the offense was just so good that it just didn't really like matter? You know what I'm saying? So this lineup is kind of interesting. So if we go here, basically what that would mean is we would just turn this into Aaron Nesmith, and then this would turn into Mathurin. I'd like to imagine that like we think that Mathurin's probably the right move going forward with that. Like we should explore him in a little more depth just because the potential is probably a little higher. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Is Mathurin better as like a reserve? Is that kind of what we're seeing with this? He should be a bench scorer? Well, let's take a look at this other one. Halliburton with Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield made a lot of things go for this team, and they traded him. I do think that was a bit of a misstep for the team. I know that he was saying he's probably not going to re-sign with the team, but man, he was a valuable guy to have next to Halliburton. So you had a really good lineup here with a lot of data behind it that says like, hey, Halliburton and Hield, offense is crazy. Obi Toppin's running to the rim. He's super effective. Turner's protecting the paint, and Bruce Brown's just a versatile player. That is a pretty deadly lineup right here. You look at some of like the top ones and stuff like that. You have Jalen Smith playing with Miles Turner, interestingly enough. You do see a Bruce Brown, Aaron Nesmith combination in there, which is kind of interesting. The worst lineup, Smith-Turner again with Nesmith, Nembhard, and Halliburton. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Let's look at the three-man combinations then, because that always tells me a little bit more of the story. So if we look here, I'm seeing like the top combinations, Halliburton with Buddy Hield. That doesn't surprise me at all that this was like the best combination they had here. And then Halliburton with Brown, two guys that they don't have anymore. But, you know, the team did have success without them afterwards. And then we get into Halliburton, Toppin, and Turner. That doesn't surprise me. Guys that can run and play off of Halliburton, it goes well. Halliburton, Nesmith, Turner. So Halliburton making everything go. And then a hustle duo of McConnell, Shepherd, and Toppin. Interesting. What were some of our worst ones? Mathurin with McConnell and Toppin. That doesn't necessarily surprise me. And then Halliburton, Mathurin, Turner. So is Mathurin not actually as effective as maybe we think he is? Maybe that's something for us to watch this year as we're dissecting this team if it has problems. Like, is Benedict Mathurin able to make like maybe a little bit more of an impact? I mean, what was the best three-man combination that Mathurin makes an appearance in? I mean, we're not seeing it. We're not really seeing it. Man, where does he... Like, I know he was hurt for, like, a lot of the year, but no, he's really only towards the bottom for some of these combinations. That's interesting, and he doesn't appear at, like, the top of a lot of these either, so Interesting little correlation there. Interesting thing to watch. How can we fix that? I don't know. That'll be interesting. But now let's go on to predictions. This one's always a fun one, right? I know you guys have a lot of questions. I know people have been waiting to see, because let's do a little review of the East. We got the Celtics and Knicks at top. Not a lot of disagreement there. Sixers kind of right here. You saw the Heat at 7, and that one brought a lot of people's like eyes and ears up. They're like, Heat at 7, interesting. Who else you got in there then? Hawks are the last play-in team. Bulls, Pistons, Wizards, Nets, all teams that have fallen out. So where are the Pacers? Where are these Indiana Pacers? This was a good basketball team when they went and got Pascal Siakam. Conference final team last year. Drumroll, please. I always do it. Knock on the desk or whatever. Where are the Pacers? The Pacers are a 5. I've got the Pacers at a 5 seed. Let the comments rain. Let it rain. Y'all tell me why I'm dumb. I can't wait. Y'all tell me why I'm dumb. This team was hard to stop last year. Yes, defensively they struggled and everything, but this team's in a good position going forward. They got young players that I think are only going to gel even more. This team stays healthy. I could see it being a 5 seed. I really could, y'all. I think I could see them as a 5. They were in the conference finals last year, so that's where I got Indiana as of right now, but this is where I now hand it off to you guys. What do you guys think? Leave me those comments. I respond to every single one, so you guys might as well leave me some. And I always just ask that you guys keep it respectful in the comments and everything. Otherwise, I gotta hide you. And like, I don't think the internet should just be a place where people can just say whatever they want whenever they want. And I think that gets dangerous. Y'all become keyboard warriors and don't just think that there's other people on the other side. But anyway, you guys have been really respectful. Thank you guys. I'm glad that I'm bringing you guys these videos 5 days a week. I'm always excited when those drop and I get to see the first couple comments and everything. So thanks to all my sweats out there that are keeping the channel going during this dead time of the year and everything. I'm loving these conversations, and I just can't wait for basketball to start again, man. It's the best. This is the worst time of the year for basketball because nothing's going on. So let's try and have those conversations now to keep ourselves afloat. But hey, until then, we'll see you guys later. Thanks so much. Bye.